All right, this video is going to explain to you how to change texts types, either for families or sorry, either for labels that you're going to put in your title block family or just in general. So the same is true, and I'll show you both in the project and in your family. And that's a very important distinction, guys. I want you to know that text families that you develop in a family or text types. Sorry, I got to use the right terminology here. Text types that you develop in a family might not necessarily translate directly to your project. So let's go to our title block. I believe that's this. Yeah. So I'm going to kind of create like a 1-inch tall text. Okay, but you guys that might not have your 5/8 inch text, that's what you'll be making. So I'm going to go to create, and let's just create text, for instance, right? So you guys know that label-wise, I've got everything up to everything up to 3/4 of an inch, but I don't have a 1-inch text. So I'm just going to go to create text, and before I actually even put it down on the page, I can immediately go to edit type. Now, this first one here, I want you to be aware of the fact that families and types, and you've heard this before in a different context, but even our text has a family and a type. The difference is text families are system families, and they can't really be modified and duplicated, right? Because text is text, right? The only thing you're going to change in terms of text is your type, okay? So that's this right here. I'm going to duplicate that, and we're going to call this 1 inch. Oh, do I have 1 inch? Oh, there is a 1 inch. How come it's not showing up over there? That's weird. Okay, so I have 1 inch text, but I don't have the other one. So hang on. Let's go to create, label, edit type. All right, weird. So anyway, I wanted to create 1 inch text, but I have 1 inch text. So let's go back to create text, and let's just make sure that that is actually 1 inch text. So text, 1 inch, great. All right, looks good. We've got 1 inch text. So if I wanted to make this a different text, right, I could go to duplicate, and I could say 1.5 inch text. So the way that you modify text here is through the stats that you have down at the bottom. Okay, so we've got text size, tab size, that's how far it tabs when you hit tab, width factor, and this is a very important thing that you need to know. So you can change the color, you can change whether or not it has an opaque or transparent background. Actually, let me show you a few of these features. Okay, so I'm just going to hit OK on this real fast, and I'm going to move my text down here. Okay, notice how the line that exists behind the text disappears when I pull it down across it. That's called your opaque or transparent setting. So if I change this to transparent, then I can see the lines behind it. Okay, that's very important for when you're putting text in front of like hatch patterns and stuff like that. Back into edit type, you can change the leader border offset. That means if you put a border on it, it just changes how far on the outside of the text the border is, or if you add a leader to it, like, oh, I don't know if I can do that in this one. I don't think you can do leaders in families, now that I'm thinking about it. Anyway, you've seen leaders though. It would just change how far that leader is from the text. Edit type, I'll go turn that off. Okay, so the other stuff is pretty standard. You know that fonts are fonts. The text size is 1 inch. The tab size I explained. Bold, italic, underline, that's all self-explanatory. Actually, I should hint on that. So if I switch this to underline, then my text comes in underlined. But I can double-click the text, and I can turn underline off. Okay, I want you to be aware of that. But then if I copy that, I have to go back in and turn that underline back on. Okay, anyway, just be aware that that's there. And then finally, the width factor, if I change this to 0.5, makes really skinny text. Okay, so that's kind of like what you would do in Illustrator or something like that. Okay, now, labels. So we created text, and we're going to create label types. The difference between text and labels is that when I go to create a new label type, right, I don't have a 1-inch label type. I go to edit type, and basically you have to create that again. So system family label, type we're going to duplicate. We're going to say 1 inch, and then we can set all of the things that we need to set here. So I create a 1-inch text size, tab size is fine, everything else there matches. And I click here and I put something in there. I'll just put author for now. Okay, so now I've got 1-inch labels. Yeah, keep readable, visible, yeah. All right. This keep readable, I want to point that out on the left. I changed some of the label like alignments and stuff like that here on the left-hand side. The difference I think between text and labels is that in text you can change some of your alignments right here in the top panel. So I can change like my horizontal alignment. I can't change my vertical alignment there. I have to change that. Where is that actually? Where's my vertical alignment? No, I'm thinking about it. I don't know where that is. Anyway, but where is there a vertical alignment? It's a good question. Now that I've been doing this for so many years, I don't think I've ever tried to modify the vertical alignment. I'll find it for you. So here's the thing that I want to point out. So there's this checkbox that's called Keep Readable. It's an interesting text box. If I uncheck it and I go to the rotate function and I just keep spinning this thing around, it sort of just rotates it as if it was any other geometrical object. If I keep readable on and I rotate this thing around, it switches so that it is always within the 180-degree realm of your quadrant, or that it's always facing, I should say, your 180-degree realm of your quadrant 1 and quadrant 4. So that's because when you rotate your sheets, you generally want your text to always face certain directions. Right? You want it to, anyway, that's the point, right? So you never read text from the left-hand side of your page. That's the argument. So actually, I don't know why this is even allowable like that. That shouldn't even be allowable. It should just be from here to here. Huh. Anyway, you don't really need to deal with that. I'm just thinking about that stuff. Okay. So anyway, that's text. And oh, there was one more I think on there. I forget what it was. It was oh, visible. If you turn off visible, it's just not going to show. If you turn it on, it will show. You can assign it to a parameter. That parameter is going to appear in your actual family. Anyway, but we're talking about labels and text, right? I'm not talking about parameters for title blocks. But anyway, any other questions? Yes?
Can you align them with the align tool?
Text aligned with the align tool? No. Yeah, that's a good question. You can't align text with the align tool, but you will be able to align just with like the ortho alignments like you see here. You can align that to whatever justification that object is aligned to. So notice how there's an alignment here on the left-hand side of the text that I'm grabbing, but it's on the right-hand side of the text that I've placed in the page. That's because the stuff that's on the page is right-hand justified, and the text I'm moving is left-hand justified. Any other questions? Okay, so that's how you create new text and new labels. New text and new label types. You've got to be very specific about this stuff.